Hey, before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more amazing stories like this. I'm Cassandra Reed, 35, a marine researcher who spent years studying ocean ecosystems. My grandparents left me their waterfront home along the edge of Olympic National Park in Washington, a sanctuary that anchored me between expeditions. After spending 18 months in Maine tracking coastal erosion, I returned to Seattle for a family dinner. Just as we sat down, my sister stood up with a triumphant grin and declared, "The house sold for $500,000. The family erupted in applause, calling it a brilliant move. I couldn't hold back. "How dare you?" I snapped. Before I could say more, she slapped me, shoved me toward the door, and spat, "Get out, loser." The room went silent, but I stayed composed. I knew the property was safeguarded under federal conservation laws. The next morning, my phone exploded, 25 missed calls in 30 minutes. Her voicemail trembled with fury. They thought they had me cornered. I leaned back, calm as ever, and said, "Too late, loser." What she didn't realize was the legal trap waiting to close. Curious how her plan fell apart? Or whether I chose forgiveness or walked away? Share your thoughts in the comments. Sometimes one decision can change a whole life. 18 months earlier explains why I remained so calm that night. My family had pressured me for years to mortgage the Washington property to fund their real estate ventures. My sister spearheaded the effort, always insisting the land was underutilized near prime coastal development zones. I refused every time, knowing federal easements protected it as critical marine habitat for endangered whales. She didn't stop, especially after her investments crashed. Cryptocurrency losses and a failed cafe left her drowning in debt. Mom and Dad helped a little, but she wanted more. "Just sign the mortgage papers," she demanded during a visit, adding, "It's family helping family." Seeing her desperation, I decided to use it against her. I pretended to agree, suggesting I might consider a preliminary contract with investors she knew. In truth, I contacted my college friend, Travis Coleman, a Seattle-based real estate lawyer. He examined the documents and confirmed the easements made any mortgage or development illegal without federal approval. "This could be a setup," Travis warned over coffee. "If she forges anything, report it immediately." We crafted a plan. I gave vague verbal consent, but never signed anything official. Travis prepared reports for environmental agencies, ready to act if she crossed the line. My sister eagerly jumped on my fake compliance, convinced she had won. She started contacting investors, promising quick returns on coastal property. I documented everything, forwarding copies to Travis. Meanwhile, I reinforced the property's protections by submitting new whale migration data to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. They added stricter designations, ensuring any unauthorized deal would violate federal law. As my main research trip neared, I knew she'd try something while I was away. Travis monitored property records remotely. "If she files a fraudulent mortgage or contract, we'll catch it early and alert authorities," he said. These easements weren't just paperwork. They were my defense, binding the land to permanent conservation. No investor could touch it without triggering federal reviews. My grandparents had enrolled it decades ago for tax benefits, but it also prevented development indefinitely. Confident in this legal shield, I left for Maine, knowing her scheme would fail. The pressure from my sister didn't start overnight. It went back to our childhood in Seattle. Growing up in the suburbs, our family lived and breathed real estate, buying, flipping, developing. Dad led the business, while Mom handled paperwork and client meetings. We were raised to prioritize money and success above everything. Deborah, my older sister, fit right in. She assisted Dad with open houses as a teen and later joined the firm full-time, thriving on closing deals. Lori, my younger sister, followed suit, studying business in college and interning summers. But I was different. Weekends found me exploring Puget Sound beaches, collecting shells and observing tide pools, not attending property viewings. My parents dismissed it as a phase. "You'll grow out of it," they said, calling my marine biology passion playing with fish when I brought home books on ocean conservation. Family dinners often turned into lectures about how my interests wouldn't pay the bills. "Look at Deborah," Mom would say. She's making commissions. Dad nodded, adding, "We need practical skills in this family." After high school, I pursued marine science. They tolerated it, but never supported it. Holidays sparked arguments over my choices, with Deborah rolling her eyes and Lori remaining silent. I volunteered at aquariums, learning about coastal ecosystems, which they considered wasted time. Then came the inheritance, 7 years ago. Our grandparents passed away within months of each other, leaving me their waterfront house along Olympic National Park. My family was outraged, expecting to sell and divide the proceeds. It's prime land, Deborah argued at the reading. We could develop it into vacation rentals. But I visited the property and fell in love. Memories of grandparents teaching me to identify sea stars and monitor kelp forests filled my mind. They always emphasized preserving the coastline. I discovered the federal easements embedded in the deeds, agreements from decades prior enrolling the land in perpetual conservation in exchange for tax breaks. The easements strictly restricted development to protect endangered whale habitat. Any mortgages or contracts without federal approval would violate environmental law. I kept quiet, knowing my family would fight. Over time, I submitted more data to strengthen the protections. Deborah's problems began spiraling about 3 years ago. Her side investments crashed. First, a cryptocurrency venture collapsed. Then a boutique she opened shut down after just 6 months due to a poor location. She ended up with mounting debts, and while our parents helped her out partially, it wasn't enough. "Let me take care of the mortgage on the house," she pressed during a visit. "It's just sitting there while I'm drowning." I refused right away, pointing to maintenance costs, but she persisted, even proposing preliminary contracts with her investor connections. Family gatherings grew tense, with Dad backing her. "It's for the business," he said. Mom added, "Think of your sister." Lori tried to mediate, but ultimately sided with them. I held my ground, knowing the easements made any plan of hers impossible. As her desperation increased, I suspected she might try something underhanded, especially with my long trip to Maine coming up. She began networking with developers, hinting she could gain access to the property. Her efforts didn't stop there. As her debts climbed, she started calling daily, leaving voicemails about how taking over the mortgage could wipe her slate clean. I ignored most messages, focusing on my work. One evening, she showed up with a stack of investor forms, insisting I review them. "It's just a preliminary step," she claimed. I skimmed the papers, returned them, and firmly refused to sign. She accused me of holding the property out of spite, but I explained it was about respecting our grandparents' wishes. The conversation ended with her slamming the door, vowing to find another way to protect the site. Meanwhile, I ordered specialized equipment for my marine studies: underwater sensors for current tracking and acoustic recorders for whale sounds. Coordinating with local conservation groups, we positioned everything carefully to avoid disturbing the habitat. Installation took weeks, with trips to the house to test connections and calibrate data logs. I consulted technicians to ensure secure remote monitoring from anywhere. During a family barbecue, Dad pulled me aside. "Deborah's in over her head," he confided. Mom overheard and added, "A little flexibility could save her business." Lori watched quietly. I reiterated my position, mentioning the easements, but they dismissed them as minor obstacles. Deborah's investments kept failing. Her latest, a real estate flip in downtown Seattle, collapsed when buyers backed out. Creditors started calling, and she turned to me again. One signature, she begged over lunch. I refused, citing the legal restrictions. She left frustrated, and I suspected she was planning something behind my back. With my main project approaching, I met with Travis at his office. He reviewed recent title searches and noticed unusual activity linked to her contacts. "We should reinforce your position," he suggested. He drafted notices for potential lenders, warning them of the easements and possible violations. Any action without approval would be reported immediately. Travis also recommended updating my insurance to cover unauthorized access. I agreed. We signed forms and discussed contingency plans for swift legal response. As my departure neared, Deborah made one last attempt at Mom's birthday dinner. "Let me connect you with my investors," she offered. I declined politely, explaining the restrictions again. She rolled her eyes, but I noticed her exchanging glances with Dad before I left. I met Travis one more time to transfer monitoring access. He took detailed notes, promising regular checks. Any sign of improper filings, I'll alert the agencies, he assured. The 18-month main assignment involved daily fieldwork on erosion sites, but I kept tabs remotely. Travis' updates were steady at first, confirming no issues. Then subtle signs emerged. Lender queries linked to Deborah's network. I prepared, knowing the easements would block any action. 2 days after that dinner, I drove to the house in Washington to inspect firsthand. The trip from Seattle took a couple of hours. Upon arrival, yellow survey flags dotted the shoreline near the property line, marking potential docks or expansions, clearly from investors scouting the site. I photographed every flag, noting positions relative to the easements, and documented tire tracks and business cards left by the crew. Back in the car, I called Travis and explained what I found. He listened, then said, "This matches the lender queries I flagged. It confirms unauthorized activity." Travis contacted the local police to file a property fraud report, including copies of the easements and my ownership documents, highlighting the federal protections. The officers treated it seriously. That morning, I promised to look into the survey company's role. By the afternoon, Travis sent me confirmation that the report had been filed, with referrals sent to state real estate regulators. He also alerted the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service about possible easement violations. The investors, a couple from Portland searching for coastal properties to flip, quickly realized the deal was a scam. Their attorney contacted Travis after discovering that the preliminary contract Deborah had pushed through didn't have my signature. They demanded answers. When Deborah stalled, they filed a civil lawsuit citing misrepresentation and breach of contract. The suit sought compensation for their time and expenses, plus punitive damages to discourage future fraud. Attached were emails and meeting notes proving her promises. Soon, Deborah's phone was inundated with calls from creditors and the investors' legal team. She left frantic voicemails for Dad and Mom, though neither could offer much help. The next week, the lawsuit papers arrived at her office, listing me as a witness. Travis advised me to submit an affidavit outlining the easements and her unauthorized actions. I complied, sticking strictly to the facts without emotion. As the case progressed, Deborah's business partners pulled back, canceling joint ventures. One evening, my phone buzzed with her number. At first, I let it go to voicemail, but curiosity got the better of me. Her voice cracked as she admitted they had caught her. She pleaded for me to say I'd verbally approved the contract. I replied with 3 words, "Too late. Loser." It felt definitive, cutting off any further pleading. Travis later updated me that the police had interviewed the survey team, who admitted acting on Deborah's referral without confirming ownership. Regulators launched an investigation into her license. The investors' lawsuit gained momentum, with preliminary court hearings scheduled. Deborah tried rallying the family, claiming it was all a misunderstanding. But Lori raised concerns after reviewing the basics. Dad attempted private negotiations, offering to cover settlements from his own funds, but the investors refused, demanding full accountability. Mom worried about the negative publicity spreading through local business circles. I remained detached, letting the process take its course, with Travis handling my side to ensure my statement stayed factual. The easements held, blocking any false claims on the property. As word spread through Seattle's real estate community, Deborah's reputation suffered. Clients backed out of deals, colleagues avoided her at events, and online reviews referenced the dispute. A week after the lawsuit was filed, Dad texted me to come over urgently. At their Seattle home, the entire family waited in the living room. Mom fidgeted nervously. Lori paced near the window, and Deborah looked exhausted, eyes puffy from stress. Dad explained they'd heard from the investor's lawyer, demanding a settlement. "We can fix this together," he said. Mom added how quickly the news was spreading among clients. Deborah tried to push me into approving the contract verbally. I reminded everyone that the easements made that legally impossible. Lori suggested a family mediator, but I pointed out it wouldn't change the facts. Dad offered to cover part of the damages, if I withdrew as a witness. It's about unity, he pressed. Mom warned the scandal could ruin the business. Deborah promised to cut ties with the investors if I helped. I listened as they mapped out plans to counter the claims. Travis had warned me about this type of pressure, so I called him on speaker. He joined remotely, explaining the suit's progress. Depositions were scheduled, and he advised that any attempt to back out could raise suspicion. Continuing the civil action was essential to accountability, especially as the investors sought full reimbursement plus legal fees. Dad argued it was too much, but Travis reminded us that misrepresentation in real estate carried standard penalties. I sided with Travis, refusing to interfere. Deborah grew agitated, accusing me of enjoying the fallout. Mom tried to calm her, but tension filled the room. Lori asked if a compromise, like a partial statement, was possible. Travis advised against it, noting half measures could complicate my position. He explained potential consequences, including asset freezes if ignored. I ended the call and faced the family directly, standing my ground. This all started with unauthorized actions, I reminded them. The meeting stretched on with more pleas, but I remained firm. By evening, Deborah received notice of the first hearing date. Her phone pinged with emails from partners questioning her ethics. One major client canceled a project due to the ongoing dispute. Dad's firm lost a referral contact who'd heard about the case, and Mom mentioned neighbors gossiping at social events. Deborah's social media showed subtle professional unfollows. The local real estate association opened a review of her practices, threatening suspension. As the lawsuit advanced, survey team witnesses confirmed her instructions. The investor's attorney pushed for discovery, digging into her financial records. Attempts to settle privately failed, as they demanded public acknowledgement. Family friends avoided them, wary of association. Dad's deals slowed with hesitant lenders. Mom withdrew from social circles. Lori's internship offers vanished, tied to the family name. Deborah faced mounting legal bills, dipping into her savings. The court granted summary judgment on key points in favor of the investors. Media outlets picked up the story as a cautionary tale in Seattle business news. Deborah's license came under formal review. Hearings scheduled. The family's reputation suffered irreparable damage. Creditors tightened loans, adding financial strain. 3 months after the initial motions, the judge ruled against Deborah. The investors won on all counts. The verdict highlighted her deliberate misrepresentation. She was ordered to repay their full advance plus interest, over $200,000, and additional fines for violating state regulations, draining her remaining accounts. Deborah appealed immediately, but her attorney warned the chances were slim given the evidence. In the meantime, she sold personal assets, downsized her apartment, and parted with her car to cover payments. The Real Estate Association revoked her professional certification, barring practice for at least 5 years. Former colleagues stopped responding to calls and applications. One investor posted an industry forum review outlining the ordeal without naming her, leaving insiders able to connect the dots. Her social circle disappeared overnight. She spent evenings scrolling through profiles of those who had distanced themselves. Dad's firm felt the ripple effects first. Longtime partners hesitated on projects, citing liability concerns. One major contract fell through when the client referenced the case. Revenue dropped 30% that quarter, forcing layoffs and bonus cuts. Mom withdrew from community groups, stepping down from a board position. Lori's career stalled. Recruiters pulled offers after background checks flagged the family connection. The once close family now met rarely, conversations strained with unspoken blame. I remained removed, receiving updates through public records rather than direct contact. Travis managed final witness confirmations, ensuring my affidavit went unchallenged. With the case closed, I blocked their numbers one by one, starting with Deborah's. No more pleas or accusations reached me. I relocated to a small rental near the Maine coast, focusing deeply on erosion studies. Weekends were spent hiking protected shores, analyzing data uninterrupted. Professionally, my networks expanded as I presented findings at conferences, free from family interference. The Washington property remained secure, its easements intact. Conservation groups highlighted the outcome as a case study. I learned the importance of protecting personal boundaries, saying no without guilt, even to family. Valuing the environment reinforced resilience, turning potential loss into lasting strength.